nothing to be afraid of. If you can believe it, you won't ever, ever let them tell you no. Yeah, this right here is what heroes are made of. This right here is what heroes are made of. This right here, yeah, this right here, yeah, this right here is what heroes are made of. Picking up the phone, already know who calling. Ain't no testing me, my destiny's to be a baller. I've been going harder, death before dishonor, ain't no other order. Always knew I'd make it from the trenches up to be a starter. I'm an all-star starer, shot caller. Take a look at the glow, bright glow, you see the aura. Look how far they took it, you should know we going farther. Be a legend today, it's all over, we just started. If you can
Live from the virtual Brands Hatch Circuit in West Kingston, England, we say good evening, race fans, and welcome to week one of the eNASCAR International iRacing series. And happy that you're with us on the iRacing Esports Network and all of NASCAR's platforms alongside Justin Prince. My name is Evan Pizzoka. Justin, really excited for tonight's competition, kicking off a 3-week Pro Invitational with some of the best of NASCAR's International series.
Yes, indeed. It's going to be exciting to see how these drivers fare out tonight to start things off. We have a stacked field of competitors, from series champions to race winners to some of the rising young talents from across NASCAR in its various divisions. It's going to be an exciting night to see how these drivers fare here at Brands Hatch.
Yeah, you'll be seeing drivers from a host of series, including, as I mentioned, those international ones. So drivers from Canada participating in the NASCAR Pinty's Series, south of the border with the NASCAR Peak Mexico Series, overseas to the Wheeling NASCAR Euro Series, and as well as some drivers from the United States and some other surrounding countries through NASCAR's Drive for Diversity program. And tonight's race at the Indy layout of Brands Hatch, Justin, kicks off this 3-week campaign that will see us visit 3 different road course races. Of course, we start tonight, though, overseas on the Indy circuit of Brands Hatch.
Yes, indeed. Brands Hatch Circuit. This facility is going to be tough for these drivers tonight. Opened in 1950, 6 total turns around this circuit. Elevation 429.8 feet, 131 meters. The distance 1.2 miles, 1.95 kilometers. A very short distance here for a road course. The laps go quick here. Just about 48 seconds per lap for our competitors tonight. And the track's name derives from Die Braun Hack, a Gallic term where braun meaning wooded slope and Hack literally the entrance to forest. So, an interesting race expected for tonight, and it's going to be wild to see how these competitors battle around this circuit and try and keep themselves on the track.
I think the track map shows as well just how small this Indy layout is compared to the full circuit, how much of the back half of the racetrack is cut out. So what that means is with those very short lap times, Justin, tonight's 70-lap race is going to take about an hour or so. It's going to be tight, packed action. And of course, you can drive the Brands Hatch circuit or anything else at iRacing by signing in today. Start your sim racing career by going to iRacing.com for more information. One thing we haven't talked yet about, Justin, is the cars, right? Of course, with all of the different series that NASCAR runs, the Pinty Series, the Peak Mexico, and the Wheeling Euro Series, they are all different than what you see in NASCAR's 3 National Touring Series in the U.S., but we're going to be driving the NASCAR Xfinity Series stock cars for this series. For the most part, most of these drivers have only ever driven these cars here on iRacing.
Yes, it's going to bring some challenges because for these competitors tonight, it's low downforce, meaning these drivers are going to have a hard time getting around the corners, and they're going to need to be near perfect when it comes to their gear shifts. Many of the drivers throughout the night have carried a lot of speed in the practices into the corners and have easily sent themselves off to the grass. So in our words, for tonight, patience is going to be very critical, Evan, with this type of car if you want to succeed as well as be able to stay on the racetrack.
And you can see the cars lining up on the front straightaway now. The NASCAR Wheeling Euro Series will actually be competing here at Brands Hatch next weekend. And it is no surprise that it is 2 of those Wheeling Euro drivers on the front row. Let's go trackside, take a look at your eNASCAR starting grid. And Simon Pilot will bring us to the green flag on a pole. His best time of 48.060, the best of all in Q, alongside Paul Zuffro in second. Victor Barral and Paul Jourdain will double up for 3rd and 4th position, with Ruben Garcia starting 5th alongside Abraham Calderon. Jake Cosio, Justin Campbell back on row 4 with Andres Perez de Lara and Giorgio Baggi, your top 10.
Jaden Reyna will start in 11th position along with Jocelyn Vecteau, with LeVar Scott right behind in 13th. Alex de Alba started in 14th position. Virginia Servent will start in 15th with Isabel Robusto in 16th, Alan Day in 17th, and Raja Karuf and Traden Lapsevich will round out your 19 drivers who have made the field tonight.
It is a good field size for such a small track, and because, again, this version clocks it at just 1.2 miles in length. I think survival is going to be critical, Justin. The off tracks here are not very forgiving, and for the guys up front, in the case of Simon Pilot, who outqualified everybody else by 0.3 of a second, lap traffic over the course of this 70-lap race is going to be a big point of focus for our front runners.
Yes, indeed, it's going to be difficult to get around the potential of traffic, especially with how tight this circuit is and the amount of grass. There is a lot of runoff area for drivers to make mistakes at and go off of the circuit, so it's going to be very important for drivers to pick their spots for moves, whether it's trying to make runs down the Cooper Straight or whether down the Bradham Straight, down the front straightaway here for tonight.
And we talk about that international connection, your pole sitter Simon Pilot up front. He got spotted after racing F4 to make his Euro debut in 2020. But the pace car's off and in. Let's go international racing at Brands Hatch. And a good dive for the first quarter for Pilot. He'll clear for the race lead. Zuffro in second, but it was a big bobble by Paul Jourdain side by side. Here comes Morales for third.
And Victor Brownless Jr. able to make the pass nice and easily as well. And that's one of the best passing opportunities we've seen them run into to Druids today, to be able to dive your way on forward into that section. But the run up to Surtees and Clark curve is also going to be one of the most challenging sections, both in the real world and the virtual world. Drivers have made major mistakes here in the section in the past and spun around on this corner exit.
You'll also notice the driver's windshield banners are color-coded based on which series they participate in. So you can see the blue peak color. That's obviously for the NASCAR Peak Mexico Series drivers. Our Wheel and Euro NASCAR drivers will have a red windshield banner. The tan color for the NASCAR Pinty Series, and a dark black background for the drivers from NASCAR's Drive for Diversity program. As you take a look at Ruben Garcia working his way through the corner, three-time champion of the NASCAR Peak Mexico Series, a two-time race winner in the NASCAR K&N Pro Series. So he has done plenty of racing both in the United States and in Mexico. Down 2 spots, though, from the start of this race. Started P5. He is trickled down to P7. Justin, as we look back towards the front of the field, there's the gap between 1 and 2. Simon Pilot maintains the advantage over Paul Zuffro in second spot. They have opened up a huge advantage on third on back already.
Yeah, they've been very consistent hitting their marks so far in the 48 2s and 3s. Some of the air drivers in the 49 second bracket in the early portion, but keeping the pressure up is going to be very key if you want to force mistakes from Pilot, with how quick he was in qualifying, how quick he was in practice, and how some of the drivers felt his pace was as a result of said speed. So I wouldn't be surprised to see that 64 try and keep as close as he can to the back end of the 66.
And these are guys, we talk about how most of them, if not all, their only experience in a NASCAR Xfinity Series car has been on the service. Pilot has a ton of sim racing experience at a lot of endurance road events and whatnot, and will be raced again in Euro NASCAR this year with DF1 Racing. So he has that experience both on and off of the virtual world. Let's take a look at this replay. Back in traffic, the 24, an aggressive drive down into turn number 1 and finished off. That was Alan Day, who got helped around. Contact with Raja Karuth, one of the Drive for Diversity program drivers in the field.
And from a multiple-time champion, that was very optimistic, to say the very least, from Day to try and dive for that opening in turn 1. As we look at the battle for third once more, this is a track that if you are over-optimistic like that, you end up paying the price, and as a result, those drivers more than 16 plus seconds behind as a result of losing so much time in that incident.
You can see that is 3 drivers from the NASCAR Peak Mexico Series all running together for third. Jourdain, Morales, and Calderon all running in line. It's already a 5-second difference to the top 2, but certainly the international drivers excelling on this road course race, Justin, and that's going to be something that I think we'll talk about as we work through this calendar, right? We'll go back stateside next week. We'll race at Circuit of the Americas in Austin, Texas, and then on July the 7th will be the third and final round of this series from the Daytona International Speedway Road Course. NASCAR's international divisions, up until recently, where the likes of, NASCAR Xfinity and Cup Series started adding a lot more road course races to their calendar. Up until recently, these series did a lot more road racing than what the racing stateside had done. So it's good to see, I think, NASCAR's top levels diversifying the track portfolio, and not at all shocked that it's these drivers who are having success early in this race.
Yeah, it's been very impressive to see some of the success here as they drive by some of the lap traffic now on the right side of the racetrack. But to get back towards your point, it's where it's now going to be where you have to be very adaptable as a driver. You have to be able to adapt to not just a speedway now in the stateside for NASCAR, but also when it comes to going left and right. And that's where a lot of drivers have seen the rise up through the ranks now. As a result, a lot of drivers are gaining road course experience, and these drivers indeed have a ton of that experience to be able to drive around a circuit like Brands Hatch. Brands Hatch, past few seasons, a staple for the Euro Series, for example.
Yeah, it'll be fun to see that upcoming race here at Brands Hatch for them. Of course, the likes of the Pinty Series, looking forward to getting their 2021 calendars underway a little bit later on this year in August is when NASCAR racing will return to Canada, and as everybody tries to get back on track. A lot of these drivers, including these Euro Series drivers who we talked about dominating Justin this race early, competed in basically their own iRacing series last year as well. That basically coincided with the ever so popular eNASCAR Pro Invitational iRacing series that featured a lot of the NASCAR Cup Series drivers. As we check in with Morales Jr. in fourth, that's one spot down from where he started, just ahead of Calderon, that Peak Mexico Series trio that runs 3, 4, and 5.
Yeah, and many of the drivers you see compete across the sim as well. Take, for example, Traded Lapsovich does a lot of sim experience work with various organizations, various series. The Canadian does a great job as a result of that, and races in the real world on short tracks as well, on top of things. So you've got multiple different levels of experience as well when it comes to the platform of iRacing as well. And it's impressive to see the drive, keep in mind, from Traded Lapsovich so far, because for Traded Lapsovich, he's your biggest mover, Evan, plus 10 already, and it shouldn't be surprised to see him cut his way through the field.
And he was one of 3 drivers who did not qualify, so obviously had the challenge starting from the rear of the field, but has been doing a good job of running up. He's just been able to get around Justin Campbell and then that 17 of Maji, who we talked about, down a spot from the start of this race, but no huge issues. We had that bit of contact we watched the replay with earlier, but there hasn't been any big pileups as we ride on board with the 17 Ford.
You can just see how good the run is off the corner there to be able to pass on by some of this traffic, and just the execution on some of these corner exits from Magi. Just how tight it is and how quick some of this reaction time needs to be to go through the gears, to make sure you go through the rumble strip, through the Clark curve, and try and make sure you run as quick as you can in that section. That's the difference from being good to great at this track, is having the confidence as well to be able to drive around said circuit.
He made his step into Euro NASCAR in 2019 and got his first win first week out in Valencia, Spain, and eventually made the step up from Euro NASCAR 2 to Euro NASCAR Pro for last season. And he is returning to Pro Series competition this year. The driver out of Switzerland initially, putting on a good show and really wheeling these race cars as well, Justin. I mean, you talked about the package and, for the different forms of I guess how these cars can be set up. At least here stateside, we're so used to the terms, high horsepower or low horsepower, and if it's the low downforce or high downforce package. At these road courses, you do have all that horsepower at your disposal. The rear end is planted to the racetrack, so you do really need to play with that throttle to get these things to turn. These NASCAR Xfinity Series cars aren't necessarily designed to get around a racetrack like Brands Hatch, with so many ups and downs, it ebbs and flows with all of the different elevation changes on this 6-turn circuit. So it really is a handful for these drivers to figure out. And it clearly, a lot of them, though, not just taking it easy. I see people hanging the back out. I mean, the back end out. I mean, drivers are being very aggressive early, trying to get positions while they're still close to one another, because this 70 run itself out all the way. So a poor start could really hurt you down the road.
Yeah, it's been intriguing to see how some of the drivers have attacked the circuit, as well as seeing how some of the tire wear has come into play potentially for some of these competitors. The fall off is already dropping down as much as 1 second for the lap time so far because of how much these drivers are slipping and sliding around this circuit. So it's not just about trying to set a hot lap 2 on top of things while you're drifting and sliding around the circuit, Evan. It's also the matter of trying to keep the tires underneath you and have that long run stability and pace to be able to keep up that consistency as the marks go on. And right now, this grouping from third on back being very consistent, near identical with some of their lap times at the moment.
They are very tight. Morales continues to be the leader of this group, but just unable to get away from anybody else. A driver who has competed on iRacing in the Mexico Telcal Series, a champion in that. Of course, only raced part-time in the Big Mexico Series last year, but had a top 6 finish in the NASCAR FedEx Challenge Series the year before that. So plenty of experience. And one other thing we haven't mentioned is you see a dive to the inside for position. Abraham Calderon trying to make some moves further down the road, but he's going to be overtaken by Jake Cosio in the 51 Toyota Supra. So move that car on through is a great example of how different these cars are over the course of the different series, right? Let's take a second look in at what happened with Paul Jourdain, the number 8 machine, just ahead of the 39. Justin, I talked about cars hanging it out. That is a little bit more sideways than he wanted, but he kept his foot in the throttle. Not enough to hang on to the spot. Morales overtakes, but Paul Jourdain giving it 110%. And just to finish that point, the 8's a perfect car to look at. Not all of NASCAR series have those door numbers or the numbers on the door, right? And you'll see that a lot of these Mexico Series cars have them towards the back of the car as they do. I know a lot of the NASCAR Pinty Series car run their numbers on the quarter panel, so do the Euro drivers. So fun to see a healthy mix of those different styles in the field tonight.
Yeah, it's interesting to see how some of the paint schemes are to match the real-world counterparts as well. And it's, for some of them, they definitely maximize the space that is available for those specific numbers and their specific stylings for the specific series as well. So it's interesting to see how it all plays out. But you mentioned the differences with the cars. Keep in mind, you have... trying to think how exactly to describe this. When it comes to the NASCAR Pinty Series, it's a similar car, for example, compared to the NASCAR Wheel and Euro Series, etc. They're similar in terms of the body, so to speak, but it's, of course, how you drive the cars that can be so different as well in the stylings, as we look now at the 77.
A good onboard perspective with Jocelyn Fecteau, who started this race 12th, but had an issue early and has since fallen 2 laps down and runs in position number 17. You talk about all the experience, 3-time starter in the Pinty Series last year. That was, of course, after initially making that transition from the Canadian Touring Car Championship to Pinty's back in 2014. So you talk about that need to be adaptable to different tracks. That's somewhat of a new concept in the likes of the NASCAR Cup Series and even this Xfinity Series, in which the cars we're looking at now as this pack of cars mid-pack continues to stack on up, Justin. But that has always been a part of international NASCAR, is that adaptability to perform on the road courses and some of the oval circuits they have.
Absolutely. And for a series such as the NASCAR Wheel and Euro Series, there's a lot of road course. The NASCAR Pinty Series goes to circuits like Circuit de Toronto Riviera, I should rather say, in the streets of Toronto in the past. And of course, don't forget about the races that go for the NASCAR Peak Mexico Series. It's a huge variety of different tracks in turn these drivers get to attack and race at on a week-to-week or a month-to-month or bi-weekly basis, and for their various schedules. And that means different challenges, of course, for each circuit. But of course, the emphasis is there to be a road course runner and be able to drive. And that's why some of the drivers are getting opportunities on some of the road courses these days at the higher levels.
Yeah, I mean, you know, we talk about as we ride on board with the roof of the number 2 machine that's on board with Abraham Calderon, exactly where he started, number 6 spot. You know, we talked about, you know, the sim having such an impact on real life racing, and of course with that Pro Invitational Series, the Chicago Street Course race a couple of weeks back, as there's a spinner up the road. Look out! Right in front of Calderon in this pack. Off track was LeVar Scott, one of the NASCAR Technical Institute sponsored Drive for Diversity cars. Lost it on his own at a turn number 1, and that was nearly a big issue for that pack. But they all just squeak on by, Justin. The fact that, you know, NASCAR is looking at getting a street circuit race, I should specify, into its U.S. markets, and maybe for the top level in the Cup Series. If you have any questions on if a street circuit NASCAR race could work, go watch some race replays of the NASCAR Pinty Series in downtown Toronto. Some of the best NASCAR action you will see. So just because these series don't always get the limelight here in the United States, they certainly have great followings in their respective countries. And of course, for the Euro Series, all the different countries in which they race in, as there's another spin up the road. Perez de Lara got turned around in front of this group. That was after contact with Isabella Robusto. So a bit of contact for some of the drivers a few laps down. And this mid-pack dodges another bullet.
Yeah, right now, some of these drivers getting very tight around some of these competitors, nearly getting contact to contact, in fact. But to get to your exact point when it comes to street courses as well, it's always been a thrill to see the Pinty Series hit the tracks like Circuit de Trois-Rivières or as well Toronto. So it's all become very entertaining. But let's take a look at what happened with Perez de Lara. You can see already kicking up the sand, already side by side with some of the traffic. You can see just right there, just overcooking the corner of the car to the inside and right in front of that whole entire pack of cars. Quick will get it out of the way.
Both of those drivers were a lap down. Watch the 55 here, too, as the leaders come through. There's a bit of a punt out of the way as Isabella Robusto doing her best to obviously adapt to a track that I'm willing to bet not many of these Drive for Diversity drivers have ever competed on. Of course, that program, Justin, based in the United States, focused on, you know, getting more opportunities to, you know, different communities, you know, get more people involved in racing. And a lot of that program with these drivers is really focused on short track racing here in the United States, right? All across the country every weekend with Rev Racing and some of those other groups is, you know, Justin Campbell and some of those other drivers are in the field here tonight. I don't think a lot of those Drive for Diversity drivers are road racers. Is out of control. Is that Paul Jourdain? It is a big bobble for the 8.
Yeah, and I think he ended up just getting loose. Jourdain did in that situation for him to kick off the racetrack. That's unfortunate for Jourdain. That's going to lose him several positions to this entire group. Now still led Calderon and Cozio at this point. But you're right about the difficulty when it comes to coming from the short tracks to the full-on road courses. Keep in mind that some of the drivers do compete on the sim. Take, for example, Raja Karu. That races a lot on the simulation with some top organizations, as well as while going to school. So let's take a look at what happened to Jourdain, and you're going to see just coming out of Druids how easy it is to lose the back end with these cars. You can see just takes a little bit of curve on the apex, a little bit too quick on the corner exit. Bye-bye race car.
And he did a good job of catching that car as to not end up in the tires. But you're right, the curbs in that corner pretty notorious for getting some of the race cars upset. You ride on board with your race leader. Simon Pilot has been in control since the get-go in this one. There was a point about maybe 10 laps ago where I thought Paul Zuffro in second was closing the gap. But Pilot's been able to open things up since then. And we talk about the uniqueness. See, as he takes the right hand off of the steering wheel, Justin, I don't think he's going with the ease of the paddles, and I think he's shifted with an H pattern.
Yes, indeed, just to the right of him to be able to go precisely into the gears. The tough part with using the H pattern, of course, is trying to make sure you get through the gears without it hitting the teeth of the H pattern. As in, when you're going from second to third, let's say, and getting yourself stuck in neutral by being off by just a little bit. Right now, he's got it to where he can simply just click the patterns up and down, and he gets himself to the gears. He's doing it nice and precisely, too, and looking nice and smooth with that steering wheel as well.
Very precise inputs as the battle for third position continues on. Victor Morales, where he started the race, it has been pretty consistent. However, Jake Cosio closing the gap the last couple of laps in the number 51, then trailed by Calderon, then trailed by Alex de Alba. So this group of 4 cars separated by just about a second and a half. You can see the intervals from one car to the next in the running order. They have all been pretty mistake-free, and they're 18 seconds off of the race leader. This race could very well end with only Pilot and Zuffro on the lead lap. And we talked about that early as a possibility, running this shorter Indy circuit of Brands Hatch and cutting out about half the distance in it. We've seen the lap traffic be a factor. We've seen contacted battles for position. In this battle for third, fourth, fifth, and sixth is pretty much the best stuff on the racetrack.
Yeah, it's been incredible to see some of the battling and bumping and banging in this group, but the tough part is just trying to set up the pass when you're so consistent on pace, where you're hoping to force and pressurize a mistake, and the mistakes are coming. You just need to be patient to be able to pick your spots. You can't dive it on in like some of the drivers earlier on in the race may have done on the older tires, because the older the tires, the harder it gets to be able to make the pass.
And patience, you know, we talk about all those different factors. I mean, it's very easy when you're almost being taunted by that race car in front of you by 2-3 car lengths or whatever, to just overdrive the race car and try to make a move. I think it's pretty astounding that those 3 NASCAR Peak Mexico Series drivers, plus the entry of Alex de Alba, who is the highest running drive for diversity driver in the field, how even they can be on pace after 26 laps, and nobody really forcing the issue. We talked about the mistake by some of those other drivers. Paul Jourdain trying to make up for it, but for the most part, top 10 cars have showed a lot of etiquette and patience to this point.
They absolutely have so far as we follow on board some of these drivers. Once again, this is Zuffro. He's been doing a very good job keeping himself on the racetrack. The tough part has been with some of the traffic and some of the little mistakes, losing about a couple tenths a lap, and that's the tough part, is trying to keep the consistency together to keep up with the race leader, and he's just been that 1/10 off with this racetrack. With how quick and small that racetrack is, that has grown dramatically. As a result, you can see direct drive wheel attached directly to the desk, in fact, Evan, with the wood platform as well, to make sure that it's properly attached and screwed on down. And as a direct drive user, I can definitely tell you that's something difficult to do, is attaching that without a full-on sim rig. Takes a lot of work to be able to properly attach it.
And look at all the small inputs, even on the straightaway, right? Just trying to walk that car to the outside. A lot of wheel input. Typically, if you're racing sports car, you're going to see drivers a little bit more smooth on the wheel. But in these stock cars, you almost have a little bit of that cutting back and forth as you overcorrect off the corner and steer it with the throttle, as somebody's off it into the grass just behind the number 14 machine. But it's not going to be an incident for your race leader. Sounds like it was the 55 machine of Robusto there trying to make some moves. But Also, some issues in this race for the number 39 machine, Victor Morales. We were talking so much about consistency, right? He in that fight with Cosio and Calderon. Well, it all slipped away for the 39 machine just a lap ago. He had issues on lap number 27, and we'll take a look here in a moment to tell you what happened, Justin. It was in the middle portion of the lap when he come back down, kind of the downhill slope towards 3 and 4, and it was a self-inflicted error. I'll take credit for this one, considering I had just said how good and mistake-free those drivers had been, but that slight error from Morales going to drop him from position number 3 all the way down to P7, and here's what happened.
Yeah, and you'll see right as he's in the middle of the apex, he's been drifting on that back end. Just that time, just that snap back to the right is enough to kick him off in the grass, and has to stay to the right side of the racetrack to make sure he doesn't come up into traffic. Actually may have made contact with Traded Lapsevich with the door.
Yeah, Lapsevich pushing his way through, the NASCAR Pinty Series driver who we've referenced a handful of times so far in this race. Made his debut in the series back in 2020, competing in the number 22 for Rookie of the Year honors, and younger brother of 2016 NASCAR Pinty's Series champion, Caden Lapsevich, not to confuse the two. So family lineage in racing is part of NASCAR's DNA, and the Lapseviches are making some moves in the NASCAR Pinty Series. And tonight, Trayton making moves on the racetrack. Justin, you mentioned earlier how he was the biggest mover at plus 10 after not qualifying. That has turned into a plus 15 as he has driven his way into P5 and is not that far behind to Alba up the road.
With the amount of preparation I've seen him getting ready for in the past few days, I shouldn't be surprised to see Lapsevich be able to find his way to the field, capitalize on some of the mistakes, and in turn charge his way on forward. He seems very comfortable with the grip from the rear tires right now on corner exit compared to the drivers that were in that big grouping. The tough part's going to be trying to get to Cosio and see how far he can get, because he's running lap times comparable to the race leaders right now. The tough part is closing up to said race leaders now and trying to make up all that lost time as a result of having to start from the back of the field.
And look at all, hanging it out was Alex de Alba that time. I mean, giving it a lot of counter steer and kind of driving it with the throttle. That was the decision I think that Morales had, but he had to make that decision on his error, right? Car got a little bit sideways as you go on board with the number 39 now. Had two options. Could have tried to drive through the slide, but risk spinning it out, or just kind of take a moment to catch it. And in a 70-lap road race, maybe not the worst of ideas to just catch that race car, avoid spinning it all the way out, and then recenter himself as somebody else is off track. That's the number 18 machine of Justin Campbell, who's a little bit out of control, but has since righted the ship in a kind of a good three-way battle back here for 12th, 13th, and a 14th spot, alongside fellow Drive for Diversity competitor Jaden Raina. And in the middle of all of that is Giorgio Baggi representing the Wheel and Euro Series.
Yeah, when it comes to Campbell, 15-year-old from Griffin, Georgia, started race career in early 2016, 3 years in Bandoleros, third year racing the Legends cars as well. It's been impressive. See, that is a bit of a slide off into the grass now once more.
It just, that thing, you could see how quickly it got out of control, and it was a good piece of driving by Baggi to hang on to it, but that certainly could have been a lot worse, and I think that's been the story for the 17 so far in this race, is just trying to limit those mistakes, and it is going to allow, for a moment, Campbell and Raina up the road to clear on through as they're ahead of traffic. And now we pick up the battle with Lapsevich, hanging it out off of the corner because Alex de Alba wants that spot back. It is a battle for 4th through 8th position in the mid-pack here, and here's the perspective from Abraham Calderon.
And a bit of clipping the grass that time, trying to make their way to the corner, and you can tell de Alba trying to apply the pressure. The struggle has been right here, coming off the final corner with the back grip compared to Traded Lapsevich, but it seems in Sector 1 and 2, de Alba has some good speed. It's just a matter of trying to make a move, as they will have some cars coming out of the pit lane next to them as well.
Yeah, that's one thing that we haven't touched on, Justin. A possible strategy. Jourdain and Fecteau off of pit road. You touched on it there as they blended back out. Everybody else has stayed out. To get to the halfway point, you got to get about 2 more laps in. If all these drivers can get to 35, it should be pretty easy for a one-stop race. And, oh, look out behind, way off track. And nearly a bit of contact, but a good avoidance there by Alan Day, who in the middle part there just was way off after contact to, I think it was Victor Borales who got into him, went all the way through the grass, and just about cleaned him out on the second time. So maybe some tempers already as here comes a rush to pit road. Alex de Alba's in, Abraham Calderon down pit road, Victor Borales, Alan Day, and all of the mid-pack cars coming in for service.
And D'Alba actually overran his pit stall a little bit there as everyone else comes and takes service now for that pit stop. This is to be able to make it to the end on fuel, believe, right here. So these drivers going 34 to 36 laps, it looks like. A couple drivers did go for the undercut. Paul Jourdain a couple laps ago. Fecteau did as well about a lap ago. We've seen as the race leader comes on in.
Simon Pilot down pit road. Paul Zuffro opting not to come in this time. So the number 64 Ford of Zuffro will lead his first laps of this race. You talk about some of the young drivers in this. How about Paul Zuffro, who's been doing a great job sticking with Simon Pilot for the majority of this race? Just a 17-year-old who just recently made his transition from karting into the Club Challenge, driving for Speedhouse in 2021, and will continue his Euro NASCAR efforts, but having a great showing here in this race. But of the race off of pit road, that 14 of D'Alba is the highest running car of those who have pit adjusted. For Zuffro up front, you talk about tire fall off. These drivers are looking, for Zuffro, his best lap was a 48.274. His last lap was a 56. I think that's a little bit of an outlier. But as we watch this replay, I'll keep an eye on the times. Here's what happened with Day. Talked about all that contact with Victor Borales, and this goes on, Justin, for like 3 corners.
Yeah, he ends up trying to go side by side, actually comes up into the fender a little bit as they came close. He comes back across the racetrack, damages the front nose of the 39, and significantly damages the back end of the 24 machine. So a bit of argy-barginess in that situation as Zuffro continues to roll his way around the racetrack as the rest of the leaders continuing to complete some of their service. Just a couple drivers have not pit, Campbell and Zuffro.
And just to finish my point there, that 56-second lap by Zuffro was an outlier. His last lap was a 50.4. So these drivers, old tires compared to new tires, you're looking at about 2 seconds and change of fall off. That's for the fastest guys. Of course, that's going to be a little bit more closer to 3 or 4 seconds when you talk about drivers further down the field. But Zuffro clearly wants to stay and run this one out. The car behind him not for position. That is lap car LeVar Scott, one of the Drive for Diversity drivers. Started 13th, running in 16th position at the moment, 3 laps down. Not really sure, Justin, what Zuffro could have gained by staying out in this race. Of course, the hope is always that you'll have the fresher tires late, but I think maybe what he's doing now is this is basically going to lock up P2 for him. He doesn't want to be caught out on trying to go for the undercut to make a play for the lead now and it hurting him. I think this call is basically to protect second in the run to the end of this race.
That's my thought process too, because you had Kozio that was slowly trying to reel him on in. You had traded Lapsevich before, and now he finally comes on in at 38 laps on his stint. This will end up losing in the lead, of course, but I think definitely will be able to defend pretty well for that second position as the 66 takes the lead.
Back to the front of the field goes Simon Pilot. Has been on cruise control so far in this race and now sees a 32-lap run to the end. But the battle for third continues to be where all of the excitement is. They haven't gotten away from each other all night long. And look at the mess of race cars up the road from Victor Borales. He's got to get around Alan Day, followed by Calderon up in the mix. Trayton Lapsevich pick it up as well after the pit cycle. So he wants to make moves. There's the 24 to the bottom. A huge slide, and what a cross as Calderon tries to go back down onto the inside. And Day pulls up in front, makes the corner, won an exchange in the battle for P6.
And it is for position as Day continues to charge his way through the field, up now plus 11 on the race. And Day has been getting stronger and stronger ever since those early race mistakes and the early dives and that damage. Now, just been able to execute as a bit of argy-barginess with some of the traffic in front. Traded Lapsevich and a bit of a lap car sandwich there for a moment.
Yeah, there's been a lot of that, and oh, somebody's off and into the tires behind. Joshua DeFecto with a big hit. You just saw that car as this pack worked through the corner, but he stays off and in the sand, so there is no issue to this battle. Basically, everybody in the field on top of each other right now, on board with Victor Morales, and he's got the best seat in the house. That's Calderon up the road. They just had their exchange. They'll work around some lap traffic, and Andres Perez de Lara, who stays out of the way and allows them to work on through. And Drayton Lapsevich just said early in the race was the guy making all the moves. Well, he's the one now trying to hang on as this pack is trying to swarm him and get up to De Alba, who leads this pack in P4.
Yeah, De Alba has actually picked up a bit of a buffer with all the traffic that they had to cut their way through, especially with Roger Carruth right in front of this entire grouping. So this is going to make things more bunched up. As a result here, as you can see, a bit of a send just up the road from a couple of these competitors now. Day's trying to take some peeks. Browis Jr.'s now trying to size up Calderon again. It's all getting very tight right now, and this is again back to where we discussed things before. You have to wait for the perfect moment with this type of racetrack, with how tight this circuit is and how quick the laps are.
And I think things were relatively calm in the first half of the race. Most of the points of excitement were somebody making a mistake and somebody else capitalizing. But at least in this mid-pack battle, a lot of the passing was very set up. It was very thought through. This second half through the pit stops, these drivers know they need to get what they can out of the fresh tires ASAP. Look at Day all the way to the bumper of the 20 Lapsevich up the road. He'll now look to the inside, throw it in, they'll touch, and he forces Lapsevich out of the way. Alan Day pushing his way through. He moves up to P5.
And he's seen the opportunity to dive it on in. Traded Lapsevich, I think, locked it up as well, trying to keep things around. And one more car spun around.
That's the two of Abraham Calderon back in the pack. Had some assistance. Lapsevich got moved out of the way of the corner previous, and then he moved Calderon with a spin, and that two car has been able to recover, but it costs Calderon, who was 7th at the start of the lap, 3 spots. He drops all the way down to position number 10.
What a sequence, to say the very least. And Day's made it clear he is not afraid to send it here at this racetrack tonight. If he sees an opening, especially in this part of the racetrack, he's likely going to take it, and that's where he's gotten a lot of the damage from in this race. As one more car off, but we'll see what happened with this battle for position. We talked about opening up the door to the right side of the racetrack. This is again into Druids, where you see Day shows the nose, dives it on in.
So there's the initial move. Lapsevich is moved, and then he's the one that goes to the inside of Calderon. The two car goes to make the quarter, and it was a little bit more of a coming together, I think, than I initially thought, but certainly Lapsevich, oh, what a big spin on the front straightaway. That is a huge hit for Regina Servant behind the number 10 Chevrolet. Another one of those Drive for Diversity cars. A huge hit getting sideways. And you can see all of the damage on the front of her number 10 Chevrolet. That car not going to be running ideally, as it has not been a good kickoff to this for the 10. Looking further towards the front of the field, Justin Campbell's number 18 being chased down by the 19 of Jaded Arania. That is a battle for position, but it is of drivers a lap down. So the battle for 11 and 12 is off of the lead lap.
Yeah, and right now, this is a battle of difference on strategy as a car in the middle of the racetrack. That's Perez de Lara, I believe. That was right in the middle of the circuit.
And again, nearly disaster. You can see the damage on the 22. De Lara lost it. Solo spin, but it bounced off that tire pack and came right out into traffic. And Justin Campbell not only avoided the incident, Justin, but made the corner. What a piece of driving from the 18 machine. as Campbell continues on in this race, driving that number 18 machine as one of the highest running cars representing Drive for Diversity.
Yeah, that's a heart attack and a heart in mouth situation when you see a driver in the middle of the racetrack like that, because you don't know if you will have that car move around, if they're still in the process of spinning, to be able to dodge it around. It was an absolutely scary moment, to say the very least, as we'll take a look towards what happened here. You'll see a big block in front in the first place, trying to battle for position. That's Scott. But the main issue is just lost the back end and a hard hit to the tire barrier, ricocheting back into the racetrack. And quickly, these drivers had to dodge to the right to try and pick a side and try and make sure they can get on by before that car moved again.
Yeah, that was such a tricky spin. It almost looked like it was the fact that the car got two tires in the grass. As there's more chaos down in Druids as another driver's off. That's the number 10 machine. And look at the 19 sideways making some contact as Rainier gets into it just a little bit there. So that part of the racetrack, 2, 3, and 4, Justin. Druids, the Graham Hill Bend, and then the Cooper Straight is just where all of the chaos is in this race. But just going back to that first replay we saw, part of me thinks the way that car snapped around so quickly, you talked about the challenges of H-pattern shifting, it almost looked like the car meant to go, say from some second to third or from third to fourth, and it went down a gear and went into the wrong gear, and that's why it spun. Is now there's another car around. That's LeVar Scott up against the inside fence on the front stretch. The one bonus of racing on the road here in iRacing is no cautions. You just let her eat, and this race has gone and has allowed itself to play through, which is why Simon Pilot maintaining a 17-second advantage in this race. And for most of it, we've been talking like 1 and 2 is decided, right? We talked about Zuffro and his decision to go for the long stopper. He just got back around Jake Cozio in a battle for second and third. Let's take in, though, the sights and sounds of Brands Hatch for an international version of iRacing Full Throttle. A couple of hard hits with iRacing Full Throttle, Justin, and you just saw another one there. But just watching these cars, it looks like some of that fatigue is starting to kick in late in this race. These drivers, I'm seeing a lot more mental mistakes. They're being a little bit more aggressive with these cars. It's causing them to be a little bit more twitchy. into my hypothesis from earlier that some drivers are getting a little bit maybe too early on the shifting or shifting out of gear. I've seen a couple of cars snap sideways, like those H patterns are giving some drivers some headaches.
Yeah, and that can happen especially on a road course when you're turning quick laps here. Yes, it can end up burning you out really quickly to try and put in all that work with all the bumps, to try and battle with your gear shifter, to try and get yourself around this type of a racetrack. So I think indeed that might be something that's coming into play here. But something that's also coming into play here is Day continuing his charge through the field. Now looking to make it a +13 to become the official biggest mover of the race if he can complete the move. Someone that's had a lot of experience, to say the very least, and now another bit of contact from him.
And sideways and around is Alex de Alba. It happened once again, seemingly in the calamity quarter for this one. Down at the end of the Cooper Straight, the left-hander through Surtees, turned him around. Just the slightest of touches. But these race cars, when they go off into the corner, they do not want to give each other room. Let's look again. Seems pretty clear to me, Justin, at least in this one, that Alan Day's got the inside position. Maybe could have used a little bit more curb, but maybe a bold move by De Alba there, trying to pinch and hold that spot. And after being so good for so long, De Alba's going to lose a handful of positions in that exchange, dropping down to P8.
And Dave was also a little bit later on the brakes too, trying to charge his way into the corner as well to be able to set up the pass. It's been incredible to see how Dave's been able to make the car stick, though, when he does that. I will say that, of course, someone with a lot of Euro NASCAR experience, made his debut 2015, became one of the most successful drivers in the history of the series, with back-to-back titles in 2017 and 18, and the first driver from the European Series, keep in mind, Evan, to debut in the NASCAR Cup Series. So a ton of experience for a Day. And don't forget, also won the third title in 2020. So we look at some of the R battles.
Yeah, a lot of stuff going on throughout the pack as this race has reached its home stretch. Less than 17 laps to go from virtual Brands Hatch Circuit. You're watching the opening round of the eNASCAR International iRacing Series. Running NASCAR Xfinity Series cars here with the Indy layout at Brands Hatch. This series featuring drivers from the NASCAR Peak of Mexico Series, the NASCAR Pinty Series, the NASCAR Wheel and Euro Series, and NASCAR's Drive for Diversity program. If you're enjoying today's race, next week on June the 30th, we'll go back stateside to virtual Circuit of the Americas at Austin, Texas. But if you don't want to wait and you want to get in on the action for yourself with iRacing, because every day is race day. For more information, go to iRacing.com. Get your sim racing career started. Is getting physical late in the going. 17 putting a bumper.
Yes, some of the drivers getting a little bit frustrated here with a couple of these battles, give and take here, trying to make some of these moves. And this has been very tricky for some of these competitors to time out some of these passes too, but I think Campbell may have a chance to dive on back. Keep in mind, Campbell's got the fresher tires compared to the 17.
Yeah, there is a little bit of a difference between those two. Campbell's tires 2 laps fresher, and he's been about 3 to 4 tenths of a second better the last handful of times around. So Campbell obviously wants to make the move. Look at all the runoff that they use as they come down the hill, through the Graham Hill bend and down onto the Cooper Straight. The 18 is pressuring, but if I've learned anything from being introduced to Giorgio Baggi in this race, is that he is not going to be pushed around and going to put up a fight as this battle continues for position number 10.
It's been incredible to see how these drivers have fared around this racetrack today, Evan, as we're in the final 14 laps or so of this race. But still, you've got to close it out, especially with the tire wear coming into its highest peaks now once more to end off this race. We've seen how tricky it is on the right rear tire today and how these drivers have drifted their way through some of these corners. It can be tough to try and balance that out as the race goes on. And now, this is the true test. Did these drivers pick up and learn from before? How are they handling the rubber buildup of the racetrack? How are they handling the track temperatures around this circuit? All of that's now coming into play now for these final few laps.
You use that first run, and that's where you get all your information to push as hard as you can on the run to the end. We had that kind of point in time 5 laps ago where it seemed like everybody had maybe lost their cool and lost the patience, but things have settled back in just a little bit as we pick up Jake Cosio running in the number 4 position. The highest running drivers, look out up the road, nearly got into the back of the 55 there, but a call to the 51 Cosio, the highest running driver representing the NASCAR Peak Mexico Series. In the number 4 spot, other drivers from that series running 6th, 7th, and 9th with Morales, Jourdain, and Garcia a little bit further on down the road. But I've talked a lot about this number 51 machine so far this evening, Justin, and how well he's been the Rookie of the Year in 2018 for the NASCAR FedEx Challenge Series and the 2019 NASCAR Peak Mexico Series Rookie of the Year. So a lot of accolades to the driver of the 51 as we slide things back a little bit in the running order. You're on board with Paul Jourdain trying to chase down Victor Morales. The fight is for P6.
Jourdain kicked off the undercut strategy for these drivers. So trying to battle with more of that tire wear compared to some more of these competitors. The difference last time by, though, Jourdain was a 10th quicker behind them. That shuffling continuing between Campbell and Maggi once more.
Yeah, they continue to exchange back and forth, and Maggi in the number 2 spot in this battle, at least. The battle itself is for 10th on back. They have invited Dallara, who's trying to work his way through. That is a lapped car, though, that's not for position. So it'll be interesting to see if he gets back up on them. They're able to get around him about 2 laps ago, but not really getting that far away. And with the battle for 10th on the back being off the lead lap, that means we only got 9 drivers on the lead lap in this race. Some traffic up the road now as LeVar Scott's going to hold the outside. Campbell goes to the bottom. Now back down to the left-hander for the Graham Hill bend. Big there for Maggi, Justin, to get back clear before the corner. If he had to go side by side with the 34 through there, it would have cost him a ton of time. Campbell thinks this thing's done. He's trying to check out, but at 17, not willing to give up this fight quite yet.
And that's one of the great things with the series is great battles such as this. These drivers are definitely having fun out there, it looks like, and wanting to try and do the best they can for the railroad organizations as well. That's going to be very critical. So this is to where I think this battle indeed, wouldn't be surprised to see it close back up again if it's well-timed traffic once more. But for Campbell, I wouldn't be surprised to see him try and run away here.
And now 2 fights on track at the same time as this race is inside of 10 laps to go in the eNASCAR International iRacing Series season opener. Race lead may be decided, but a handful of positions still up for grabs.
This is going to be very intriguing how this all comes about. As Morales Jr. trying to hold on in front of Jourdain still. You still have that battle for 10th position, trying to separate out a little bit by about a second or so as well. Jourdain, I think, might have an opportunity, though, to try and pounce the next couple laps if he keeps the momentum up here for this battle.
And they have a healthy enough advantage over Alex D'Alba that's not an issue. Lap traffic at Raja Caruth now trying to work his way through. You see the space station colors on that Drive for Diversity number 13 Chevy. He's going to try his best to not be a factor here. They dispose of 1 lapped car in Dallara, but you're on board with the 8 machine. Look out on the inside. Here comes Caruth. That is faster lapped traffic. It's a good pass by the 13 Justin, but it hurts Paul Jourdain in this battle.
It definitely hurts because that's a driver with only 8-9 laps on the tires that's making the moves on by, but there's the chance that, of course, Caruth is going to have to pass by Morales Jr. So that's where you gain the time back and that balance back and forth. Look at that, though. They've been able to close back up the training laps a bit with all this to make it a 3-car scrap potentially for the final stages.
And they want to make this interesting and run this one out to the very end. Jourdain now. You can see Caruth is stuck in the middle of these two. So the benefit for Jourdain would be here. He lost time when Caruth passed him, but he's going to go to make the pass in the exact same spot. Once again to the inside. Completes the move. Victor Morales drops back, but it's a net loss I think, in the end of this one for Jourdain. He's further behind Perales than he was before that pass was made by the lap traffic. Plenty of time to set him up, Justin. 7 laps to go this time by Trayton Lapcevich, about a second up the road as well, as now Carruth going to try to deal with him in this trio fighting for 5, 6, and 7.
And Jourdain seems to be struggling coming off of Clark Corner right now with the bobbling. That's what's really costing him time, is just he can't get the car to grip up the way he needs it to for that part of the racetrack. He is looking very good, though, in Sector 1 of the racetrack. It's when they get to the final section of the course is where the problems now overlay, is Trayton Lapcevich getting loose.
Sideways and into the tires as he overcooked it on his own. He had to give up that inside position in the corner, and he tried to compensate for that when he saw the 39 of Perales close to the bottom, spins that car out, and Trayton Lapcevich will go from 5th to 7th with a late race mistake. Let's watch it again.
And all he was trying to do was diving it down the corner after letting by Roger Carruth for traffic, and just couldn't get the grip up. He was sliding the tires by the apex, in fact. Just couldn't get enough grip with all the marbles, and now it's lost him an opportunity for a top 5 run possibly, unless things heat up amongst these two.
And maybe that's what he's going to hope for. The good news is the contact wasn't heavy into the tire barrier, but the bad news is it costs Lapcevich about 5 seconds. That's the difference now between Perales and Jourdain and Trayton's number 20 machine, which rides in the number 7 spot. So they were going to be hard-pressed to get to the 20. There's nothing that Raja Carruth did wrong there, but it's just timing and location that hurts that 20. And now we'll see if Paul Jourdain, remember Jourdain was up here, Justin, earlier in this race, but it was a mistake in his own right that cost him a lot of positions after a spin, and a quick fix, got that car fixed up. He wants to race this one out to the end.
Looking now once more with Maggi and to see how he's handling this racetrack in the battle going on still for about 10th position. See just how much he's trying to bobble and weave this car, and I believe that's a Formula wheel he's actually using there, or a Formula rim, Evan, in fact. And you can see how much he's having to bobble back and forth with it to try and keep grip of this track, especially correct it to the left as he goes to the right.
Yeah, we see that even in the pro ranks here on iRacing with the likes of the eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing series and some of the road racing they do, where drivers will change from that stock car rim, which you saw with the onboard on the left-hand side, to a Formula or open wheel car rim on the right-hand side. Just better, I think, for this kind of racing to be able to make those changes. You're able to get a lot more wheel movement in with less input from the driver, Justin. A lot of the time, if you don't want to go for the H pattern, you can go with those paddles built in. And last night's Coke Series winner, for Bobby Zelensky, who gets a lot of those wins on the road course, is somebody who does that same thing.
And keep in mind, it takes a lot of preciseness when you're using that particular rim for some of these racetracks, because yes, it can help you in some circumstances on the road courses in particular, but in others it can hurt you in terms of stability compared to the size of the wheel. But in these final stages, keep in mind, this battle is looking like it's separating out. Jourdain just cannot get any rear grip in the sections he needs to be able to keep up.
It's just been difficult, and you need to be able to figure something out, because at this gap between the two, you're going to need, with 2 laps to go, you're going to need a healthy margin of lap. You're going to need a half a second per lap, but I think if you haven't found it by now, not likely that you're going to randomly come across it unless it's going to be a mistake by the driver of the 39 machine.
Yeah, and that's the tough part again, is hoping that that mistake comes. There is a bit of traffic up the road, and they're also reeling in Jake Cozio as well, but I don't think it's going to be close enough to be a major factor unless something was to happen in these final couple laps.
And at the front of the field, Simon Bilant going to be looking for the white flag this time through. He has been oh so good in this season opener. Going to come to an end shortly. Will there be any late race passes? 1 lap to go for the 66.
It's been domination from Simon from the green flag. Very consistent, very clean. You can definitely tell he's put in the preparation, has some experience on the sim when it comes to driving at a track such as this. It's been a stellar performance for him today, Evan, to be able to cut his way around this course and lap his way through much of the field.
He finished third in the Euro NASCAR Esport Championship earlier this year. The 19-year-old Belgian, the Euro NASCAR 2 competitor for DF1 Racing, has been oh so perfect tonight, and he'll come through the final quarter to win the inaugural eNASCAR International iRacing Series race from Brands Hatch Circuit. What a drive for the 66. Paul Zuffro lockstep with him in second position. His fellow NASCAR Whelen Euro Series competitor is going to come through and take home second position after a little bit of a tire gamble from halfway home. Zuffro wraps up a Whelen 1-2. How about that for the Euro drivers?
Don't forget about Day as well with a stellar drive after struggling and not getting a qualifying run earlier, able to charge his way to the top 3. Overall, 8 drivers on the lead lap, Evan.
Incredible stuff. I thought that based on the speed early that maybe only Pilot was going to be on the lead lap. So very impressive for 9 drivers to be able to hang with that. And of the 4 Whelen Euro NASCAR drivers in the field, Justin, 3 of them finish 1, 2, and 3. Very clearly that they are ready for their real race here at Brands Hatch just next weekend. So a great way to use the sim for fun. Maybe for their case, a great way to use the sim to get prepared for your real life race. There he is, right-hand side of your screen. All business tonight for Simon Pilot. There's the first bit of touch it had into the fence as he celebrates on the front straightaway. First ever eNASCAR International iRacing Series winner. Picture perfect tonight. Really didn't make any step wrong. Not only did he have the speed, Justin, but he had the patience to work through the traffic when he needed to, and didn't take any unnecessary risks. And the final margin of victory going to be 26 seconds. He's happy with that one.
Yeah, you can tell just by some of the emotions that he's definitely happy about how consistent he was there. He was near perfect, no mistakes, had the speed, and definitely showed his experience on the sim. Absolutely dominating performance today.
Let's talk about your results here from virtual Brands Hatch. Of course, it is the Whelen NASCAR drivers who finished 1, 2, and 3. Pilot ahead of Zuffro, ahead of Day. And then how about some representation with the NASCAR Peak of Mexico Series? The next 3 spots with Jake Cosio, Victor Morales, and Paul Jourdain, 4, 5, and 6. Talked a lot about them this evening. Highest running driver from the NASCAR Pinty Series, Trayton Lapsevich, comes home 7th ahead of Ruben Garcia. Bit of a quiet night for the 88, who slides in P8. And then your NASCAR Diversity drivers, Alex DeAlba and Justin Campbell, round the top 10 out.
Maggi finished off in 11th position with Reina in 12th spot. Roger Carew 2 laps down in 13th. LeVar Scott 5 laps down in 14th. Andres Perez de Lara in 15th, with Necto, Robusto, Servent, and Calderon rounding out the 19 drivers. But I think we have a very happy driver who's ready for celebrations. Simon Pilot with a dominating performance today. Simon, how are you feeling about your performance today?
Thank you. Very good. Obviously, it was more of a race against myself and not making mistakes, because Paul was not far. If I did any mistake, Paul would have been there. So it was really a tough race, because 1 hour is pretty long with those cars. I had to change tires midway, which I think was the best option. So, but yeah, I'm pretty proud of the pace I kept throughout the race.
How was the preparation for this type of a race, knowing the difficulty with this track, but also the difficulty of this car to be able to wheel it around a road course?
The preparation, I usually first start some quali laps to try to make the best lap possible. But then I focus more on the long runs, because I know that's where a lot of people make mistakes and where you can lose a lot of time. So it's just long run and saving tires so you can keep the good pace for as many laps as you can.
A dominating performance from you today. Congratulations on the victory.
Thank you. Thank you.
Simon Pilot coming away with the victory today, Evan.
It was so good, and we look forward as we fly back to North America and head to the virtual circuit of the Americas, Justin. We talk about some of the most iconic road courses in the world, and it'll be the Formula One track at Austin, Texas, that plays host to round number 2 next Wednesday, June the 30th, right here on the iRacing Esports Network. We talk about a very short Brands Hatch Indy circuit, a very different story when we head to COTA.
A very big circuit, and of course hosted NASCAR competition just about a month or so ago. That brought some very intense action there as well. Great passing opportunities in the arena section, as well as down the back straight, as well as that run up through to turn 1, and that elevation change brings so many challenges to hit your marks and be able to lock up the brakes as well. It's going to be entertaining to see how it all fares out at COTA.
It will be, and if tonight was any indication, Justin, we're going to have to be watching out for these NASCAR Wheeling Euro Series, because they were oh so good, with the pilot Zuffro and Day coming home first, second, and third. Of course, this is a racetrack. We talk about how, not a lot of drivers in this series have been in these Xfinity cars. For a lot of them, they haven't been to these tracks, right? We noted that with the Drive for Diversity drivers who are really focused on short tracks in the U.S. For these Euro guys, this is a track that they actually compete at tonight at Brands Hatch. It'll be interesting to see if that changes, if there's a little bit more of a learning curve when they head to COTA, because tonight they had it handled, but outside of the top 3, which seemed to be decided for most of it, that mid-pack battle was great. I thoroughly enjoyed today's race.
I definitely enjoyed today's race as well. A lot of thrilling battles, and you can definitely tell how some of the drivers prepared and how some of the drivers in turn were able to deal with the tire wear. And that was the most intriguing part to me, was how would the drivers fare once you had about the 2 to 3 seconds of fall off. And in turn, we've seen the results with some great battling and some drivers making some brave moves and feeling comfortable to make some dives in some of the spots. It was absolutely entertaining, to say the very least, Evan, from start to finish, to see how these drivers fared out tonight. It was a great race overall.
Yeah, great show, and certainly, I think, hopefully, a sign of things to come, with 1 race down and now 2 stops in the United States due up next for rounds number 2 and 3. What a reminder that if you want to get in on sim racing action like this, you can sign up for iRacing today, because with iRacing, every day is race day. Go to iRacing.com for more information on how to get your sim racing career started. But until next time, that is it for us here tonight from England. So on behalf of our entire team at NASCAR, our international broadcast crew downstairs at iRacing, for making this happen, and for your broadcast team tonight. For Justin Prince and myself, Evan Pasoko, I want to thank you for tuning in and congratulate Simon Pilot, your inaugural International Series winner. We're back next Wednesday, June the 30th, from virtual Circuit of the Americas in Austin, Texas, USA. That race and every race of the eNASCAR International iRacing Series can be found right here on the iRacing Esports Network. Till next time, good night.